Okay, so it's the 3rd of September 2020. This is the full moon rising in the sign of Aries. The moon won't actually be totally full until approximately 7 or so AM in the morning, which is like 12 hours from now, a little bit over 12 hours, which is how I knew I was able to come out and watch it rising tonight, just a little bit after dark, not quite half an hour, but so there's still a bit of twilight hanging around, obviously from the influence of the sun. If I look straight up, I have a perfect view of like millions and billions of stars. They won't show up on this camera, of course, because this is the Samsung Galaxy S10 camera, but the stars are there, trust me. The wind's come up a little bit, it's a little bit coolish, but it is spring now. And I'm just going to rest my camera back on my staff for a short period of time, because as I've been standing here watching this, I have literally been watching the moon moving towards me. Now I know that's a little bit hard for the globe grapplers to accept, because they see it's just going up. And yes, that's perspective for you. If something gets nearer, it appears to get higher. So I watched it when its first little edge peeked above the mountain through the trees beneath it. And there's an aeroplane flying towards. I wonder if I can zoom in, if that will show. Probably not. It's probably going to be overexposed as a result of zooming. I'll just leave it at, oh hang on, here, let's go to half zoom. You might see a little flashing light go by, I don't know. It's just under the moon there. Probably won't show on this camera. I'll go back to a normal 1.0x, which makes it look way, way smaller than it does to my naked eye. The flashing light of the plane continuing northwards. Sometimes they fly sort of overhead here, but this one obviously is flying beyond the coast, because by the time where I can see, because I know this area and I know how perspective works, that particular plane would be at least on the edge of the coast, if not slightly further east beyond the land, but who knows, can't tell exactly from here. But from my approximation, that one is at least at the coast. Sometimes they fly behind me, which is west, obviously, since the moon is rising in the east. But probably not even showing, it'd be too hard to detect in the shorter period of time. But to me, it's as though I can see with my naked eye. I can see the moon actually moving. So whether or not that's going to show on the camera, I don't know if it's got sensitive enough eyes, so to speak, as I do. I do have good eyes. I have all the eyes. I've studied all. Sorry, I fell into Trump mode for a second. I'm craning my neck upwards now, personally, not the camera, simply because I just love looking at the Milky Way, and I can see it's already dimming because it comes out really bright when the sun sets, but then the moon is sort of, doing its exposure thing. And so I'm already starting to lose a small amount of clarity of some of the stars that I was already able to see. And soon the light from the moon is going to just sort of wash them out, I think is a good word, or drown them out a little bit. That's just the nature of light, because light exists here in the atmosphere. And so when the atmosphere isn't being illuminated by the sun's light, as it is in daytime or in the sun's proximity when it's nearer to us, what we call day, the reason we have daylight is because the atmospheric gases glow, as you can clearly see around the moon itself. You don't see the moon's light lighting up the entire sky like the sun's light does, because the sun is the energy source. It's the electrostimulator of the noble gases of the atmosphere, which cause the entire atmosphere to glow with daylight, leaving the bright spectrum of the sun, or apparition of the sun, directly in the line of sight. You can't look at it in the daytime, it's too bright. When it's this close to the horizon, as the moon currently is, well, you can't even look at the sun when it's that close. It has to be like pretty much through the entire atmosphere just before it sets. You can easily look at it with the naked eye. So here we're seeing this big power ball coming towards us. It was so obvious when it was much lower. Maybe I should have started filming then. But as it comes towards us, due to the nature of perspective, it appears to get higher. That is just... Don't get too far, Cooper. Dog just crossed the road. Hopefully no cars come while we're here, because I'll have to reef him back. He's on an extendable lead. Due to the... What was I talking about? I forgot now. Something about perspective and stuff. But you probably already knew what I was going to say, so I don't have to repeat myself a million, kajillion, plus one times. We'll just leave it at a million, kajillion for now. But yeah, the perspective matrix means that where I'm holding my camera, which is just below chin height, it's actually, its line of sight is horizontal or parallel. There's many different words to explain perspective, whereas mine, I'm slightly higher than the camera, so I've got like stuffed if I know, about 117 millimeters height advantage, approximately. So we've more or less got the same line of sight over such a great distance. It is just pretty here, just looking at all the stars, watching this beautiful full moon approaching. And I'd like to stress that word, approaching. That's what makes it appear to be rising. As soon as it gets over me, like, I'll just do this with the camera for the sake of to show the point. And so now I'm pointing the camera straight up at the beautiful, gorgeous Milky Way. By the time it gets there, it will appear really high, but if I kept sort of bending backwards like that, doing that sort of thing, it'll appear to be getting lower, even though it's parallel to the ground the whole entire time. The fact it does appear so near and appears to be rising so fast is proof that it's really pretty bloody damn close. You know, like, I'm not talking, you know, jump in a plane and fly to it close, but I'm also not saying jump in a jet and go 238,000 miles close either. It is, in my rough estimation, I'll do it in miles because, you know, I grew up sort of with a generation that still talked in miles and inches, even though we'd already gone metric. But a vast majority of the world can still understand miles, mostly because we get a lot of our data from the United States of arseholes. And according to the NASA holes, whatever they're called, arseholes, the arsenals, yeah, that's a good word for them. I probably bet they got a good arsenal of deadly weapons and survival gear and shit. But according to the arseholes, when the moon eclipses the sun, it leaves a shadow on the earth, and I have to bloody double check this because I can't remember if it's 70 miles or 90 miles. 70, 90. Let's just toss a coin and say 80. Let's just say, I think it's 70, but let's just say it's 80. It doesn't matter. The point is, if that's the size shadow the moon casts on the Earth during a solar eclipse, then that's how big the moon is. Somewhere between 70 and 90 miles big. Now if I see that, I could easily hold my hand out, but I can't because one hand's holding the camera and the other hand's holding my staff, which is holding the dog and my beer. If I held my hand out and put my thumb up in front of the moon, my thumb will entirely block the moon. And we know for a fact that the moon is bigger than my thumb. It's 70 to 90 miles big, but my thumb is only like half an inch, or 17.5 millimeters. So to try and gauge the size of the moon according to something within visual range is kind of stupid. And that's what we call the distance diminution effect, where something further away appears a lot smaller than it would if it was close. So now that we've established that, and we've established that the shadow of the moon is approximately 80 miles wide, and we can see that, it's, I don't know, you could hold a quarter in front of it, or an Australian 10-cent piece. They're both the exact same size. If you held a 10-cent piece in front of the moon, you could probably adjust it in such a way so that they appeared to be exactly the same size. So once again, that's only given you a 2-point factor to try and estimate how big it is. Plus, we know the size of it really because of the size of the shadow. So what we're trying to now establish is how actually high is it? And I'm going to give you a rough guess here, because obviously when the plane flew by, that's no judge of scale either. It was just a couple of tiny flashing lights, and the plane's like the size of a football field almost, depending which code of football you follow. But let's say it's approximately, almost 100 meters long, and the two tiny flashing lights were about, let's say, a guess again, if it's 30,000 feet, then it's about 5 miles high, and it was tiny. So if the moon is 70 to 80 or 90 miles wide, and the plane flew about 2 inches below it, then I would just estimate that the moon is about 45 miles high. That's my best estimation. Sorry, I lifted up my camera when I spoke that. This is still back resting on my staff again, so that you can see the height above the trees is giving the estimation of how rapidly it's getting near to us, for those people who love their mathemagics and have to understand everything according to numbers and figures rather than observable logic and logical deduction. That's me. I prefer logical deduction, understanding the fundamental principles of basically perspective, laws of convergence, things higher than us, things lower than us, and just shutting the fuck up and listening to what nature has to say. And so I'm going to continue on my walk, going to empty my bladder somewhere and crack open another beer that still has beer content in it. And I'm sure my dog will be quite happy, because I've been sitting here for frickin' ages and he's bored as hell. So adios, and here we enter into the new age of understanding of what it is to be living on a stationary planet Earth, where the wind is moving independently, and yet there are still people who believe the atmosphere moves faster than the speed of sound with a spinning space ball. You absolutely poorly unfortunate, stupid, indoctrinated, donut-headed wombats. Now that I got that out of my system, I'm glad I brought up the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is the air. Wind is the air. Wind moves independently, different directions, at different heights. It is not moving with a spinning space ball going 1,040 miles per hour at its fattest, widest point in the middle, the belt area, the equator. And since I'm at it, let me just say that if we are orbiting the sun and all we see is the stars spinning in a circle around above us, then the orbit around the sun is 64 times faster than the 1,040 miles per hour rotational speed. It is 66,600 miles per hour, which means that the Earth is travelling in a linear direction 1.6 million miles per day. I'd like to stress that, million miles a day. That nothing could keep up with that. And if we're taking time-lapse photography of the stars, showing star trails, they would all be linear blurs in the direction of what we're going around the sun, not just the gentle rotation that we see to give us the illusion that we ourselves are spinning. Thank you and good night.